confession can be a form of healing, and through stories, we find the courage to face the unspoken. If you believe in the power of truth and emotion, don't forget to subscribe to Tears and Truth, where every story matters. The story begins on a rainy night in Pennsylvania. The rain started around 11:45 p.m. A cold, steady drizzle that tapped gently against the windows of the old colonial home Leah and Raj had bought just 6 months earlier in rural Pennsylvania. It was their dream come true, a sprawling 2-story farmhouse with creaky wood floors, antique charm, and a nursery waiting to welcome their first child. Their daughter, Anika, had just turned 3 months old. She was the light of their lives, quiet, observant, with big brown eyes and a soft patch of dark hair. The pregnancy had been complicated, with Leah battling gestational diabetes and nearly losing Anika at 32 weeks. But they made it through, and now life had begun to feel somewhat normal. Raj, originally from Mumbai, had taken a job as a systems analyst in the nearby city. Leah, a Pennsylvania native and once an art teacher, was on maternity leave. She spent her days painting in the converted attic studio while Anika napped beside her in a bassinet. That night, Anika had fallen asleep early. Raj, exhausted from a long week, turned in around 10 p.m. Leah stayed up a bit longer, folding laundry and scrolling through baby sleep forums on her phone. Around midnight, she finally climbed into bed and kissed her husband on the forehead. They had one of those high-tech baby monitors that not only played lullabies but also showed live video and sound. It gave Leah a strange sense of comfort and control. Anika had her own room down the hall, decorated with pink clouds, twinkling fairy lights, and a hand-painted mural Leah had done herself at 2:13 a.m. The monitor crackled. Leah stirred that it was faint, almost like static. She blinked blearily at the screen on the nightstand. The nursery appeared dark but calm. No movement, just the soft glow of the nightlight. Then came the sound again, a low, almost muffled cry. Leah sat up straight. It wasn't Anika's usual cry. It was softer, raspier, like a child trying to stifle sobs. She grabbed the monitor, squinting at the screen. The camera lens faced Anika's crib, and it was empty. That didn't make sense. Heart pounding, Leah rushed down the hallway, bare feet hitting the wood floor like thunder in the silent house. The nursery door creaked open. Anika was sound asleep in the bassinet next to her easel in the attic studio, where Leah had forgotten she placed her after a late-night painting session. The crib in the nursery was empty and silent. Leah stood frozen, trying to convince herself she had imagined the sound. Back in the bedroom, Raj stirred and rubbed his eyes. "Is she okay?" "She's fine," Leah whispered. I forgot she was with me in the attic." Raj nodded, already drifting back to sleep. Leah sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the monitor. Then it came again, a long, distant wail. She turned the volume up. The sound sent shivers down her spine. It wasn't a baby, it was a child. Older, maybe 2 or 3. And it sounded terrified. She looked back at the screen. Still empty. Still dark. Still motionless. Chalking it up to some sort of tech interference, Leah powered the monitor off and sat in silence for a while before lying back down. But sleep didn't come easily. The crying lingered in her mind, curling around her like mist in a forest. Familiar, yet completely out of place. The next morning, Leah stood in the nursery with a cup of coffee, staring at the crib. The pale morning light filtered through the pink curtains, dancing across the hardwood floor. The room looked as it always did. Still, quiet, innocent. But something felt off. She reached down to smooth out the tiny baby blanket inside the crib and noticed a slight chill in the room. Not the kind from a cracked window or faulty insulation, but the kind that seemed to settle in your bones. The thermostat read a normal 70-degree F. She looked at the baby monitor mounted above the crib. It had recorded nothing after she'd turned it off. No logs, no saved audio, like it had never happened. Raj kissed her cheek before heading out the door. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah," Leah said, hesitating. "Just a weird night." He paused. "You didn't sleep much, did you?" She offered a tired smile. New mom insomnia. After he left, she brought Anika back down to the nursery for her morning nap. As Leah lowered her into the crib, Anika's eyes widened and her mouth puckered. She started to cry, a sharp, panicked cry unlike anything Leah had heard before. "What is it, baby girl?" she whispered, lifting her again. Anika stopped crying the second she was back in Leah's arms. When she tried again, placing her gently into the crib, the same thing happened. Anika screamed at it was as if the crib itself terrified her. Leah eventually gave up and let her nap on the living room sofa beside her. While Anika slept peacefully, Leah found herself researching baby monitors, looking up stories of interference, even hacking. But the posts she found didn't match what she had heard. Most talked about distorted noises, faint voices from baby monitors picking up neighbors' radios, or crossed signals. But this was different. This sounded real. Later that night, after Raj was asleep, Leah turned the monitor back on. She adjusted the angle slightly to cover more of the room, made sure Anika was beside her in the bassinet again, and lay down with a blanket draped around her. 1:17 a.m. The crying started again, soft at first, then louder. Leah shot up and looked at the monitor screen. Nothing. But this time, the crying was followed by something else. A voice. Barely audible. A child's voice. "Mommy?" The blood drained from Leah's face. She rewound the audio. Listened again. "Mommy?" The voice whispered. Shaky, trembling. She pressed record on her phone and captured it. Then she rushed down the hallway, her body trembling, and opened the nursery door. Cold. The room was freezing cold. She could see her breath, but there was no draft. Everything was as it should be, except the air was heavy, like a presence lingered just beyond her reach. She whispered into the room. "Is someone here?" Nothing. But as she turned to leave, she heard it again. This time, not from the monitor, not from the hallway. From the crib. A soft giggle, high-pitched, almost playful. Then the sound of something scraping lightly across the wooden slats. She backed away, heart slamming in her chest, and closed the door. By morning, she convinced herself it had been a trick of her overtired mind. Postpartum stress. Maybe. But when she showed Raj the audio clip, he frowned. It could be a neighbor's kid. Maybe the monitors picking up stray signals. "But no one lives within 100 yards of us," she replied quietly. "And I've never heard that voice before." Raj gently touched her shoulder. "Maybe you should get some rest today. Don't stress yourself." Leah nodded, but her thoughts swirled. That night, she placed the monitor in the nursery again. And as the rain returned, gentle, persistent, and steady, the voice returned too. But this time, it didn't see or wide at it laughed. And then it whispered, clear as day, "She's not your baby." Leah didn't sleep at all that night. She sat up, phone clutched in her hand, watching the nursery monitor and playing back the recording over and over again. The words chilled her. "She's not your baby." At 4:27 a.m., after hours of staring at the screen, and occasionally checking on a peacefully sleeping Anika, Leah walked into the nursery with a flashlight. Every step felt like walking deeper into water, thick, muffled, and unreal. The moment she entered the room, the temperature dropped again. The air felt denser. Still, she ran her fingers along the crib slats where she thought she'd heard the scraping. Her flashlight flickered, then caught something a faint scratch. She leaned in, letters, clumsily carved into the back rail of the crib's headboard. Emma, her breath hitched. She hadn't seen it before. She was sure it hadn't been there when they assembled the crib. It had been brand new, from a box. Raj had built it himself and even joked that it was more complicated than an IKEA bookshelf. Why would it say Emma? Leah's mind spiraled. Was it a factory error? A returned item? She snapped photos and sat on the floor, staring at the name. That morning, Raj dismissed it. It's probably just a scratch from before. Maybe some kid played with it in the store before we bought it. No, Leah whispered. This is fresh, and I swear it wasn't there before. Raj sighed and left for work, gently suggesting she take a break from the monitor. You're tired, Lee. You've barely slept since Anika was born. Maybe talk to someone? A therapist? Leah didn't respond, not out of anger, but out of fear that she wasn't losing her mind. That something real, something terrible was happening. Later that day, she called the baby store. They confirmed the crib was shipped directly from the factory. No returns. No floor models. Leah went cold. That evening, she returned to the attic to paint, needing a distraction. Anika slept peacefully beside her again in the bassinet. Leah stared at the canvas, half-finished wildflowers, but her hand trembled too much to hold the brush, so she went online. She searched for news stories, obituaries, anything with Emma, plus Nursery, plus Pennsylvania. And then she found IT.AN article. 10 years ago, a family who once lived just 2 towns over. The mother had fallen asleep downstairs. The baby monitor failed. A short circuit in a space heater sparked a blaze in the nursery. The baby's name? Emma LeClaire. She was 14 months old when she died. Leah's stomach turned. There was even a photo in the article. A chubby-cheeked baby girl with dark eyes and a headband. Something about the expression, calm, curious, mirrored her own daughter. Her hands shook as she closed the laptop. She didn't tell Raj. Not yet. That night, she set the monitor up again and waited. It didn't take long. At 1:02 a.m., the screen flickered. The empty crib appeared. But this time, something moved. A small figure. At first, it looked like static. But then the shape of a child slowly formed on the screen, standing just beyond the edge of the camera's focus. Small, barefoot, in what looked like a white nightgown. The child slowly turned toward the monitor, face blurry, eyes glowing faintly, and then, in the softest voice yet, she whispered, "She belongs to me now." Leah screamed and yanked the power cord from the monitor. She clutched Anika from her bassinet and ran to the bedroom, locking the door behind her. Raj sat up, startled. What happened? She couldn't speak, because the words she had just heard didn't feel like a hallucination. They felt like a threat. The next morning, Leah barely spoke. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were sunken, her hands shaking as she clutched Anika close to her chest. Raj tried to talk to her, offered to take the day off, even called his sister in Chicago to see if she could come help. But Leah just shook her head. No one else in this house. Raj placed a warm hand on her back. Leah, I love you, but you're scaring me. Leah said nothing. Instead, she waited until Raj left for work and then called a local historian who specialized in old homes in their county. The Meadows farmhouse was over 100 years old, and Leah now suspected there was more to it than just charming woodwork and antique doorknobs. The historian, Ruth Kendrick, was an elderly woman with a gravelly voice and sharp memory. Leah explained what she could without sounding like she needed psychiatric help. The house at 212 Maple Lane? Ruth asked. Oh yes, that's the Lambert place. Lambert, the family who built it in 1903. Sad story, really. There were always rumors of tragedy surrounding that house. Leah's voice went dry. What kind of tragedy? Well, the original owners lost 2 children within a few years. One to scarlet fever. The other fell down the stairs. A little girl named Emmeline. Folks called her Emma. Leah nearly dropped the phone. I believe there was also a fire in the 90s. Not in the house itself, but a nearby property owned by relatives. People say the spirit of the baby girl never moved on. That she got attached. Attached to what? To the nursery, Ruth said simply. She died in one, and she lingers in others. There's an old belief that some spirits, especially young ones, are drawn to familiar places. Cribs, rocking chairs, baby laughter. They seek out the comfort they lost. Leah was trembling. Is it dangerous? There was a pause. She wasn't, at first, Ruth replied. But the longer they linger, the more desperate they become. It's not malevolent, but it can become that way, especially when they feel replaced. Replaced. Leah's chest tightened as she remembered the words. She's not your baby. She belongs to me now. That evening, she told Raj everything. To her surprise, he didn't laugh. He didn't tell her she was crazy. He listened, and when she showed him the monitor footage, what little remained before the screen glitched out, his face went pale. What do we do? He asked quietly. I don't know, she whispered. They agreed to move Anika into their room permanently. The nursery door stayed closed. But that night, it didn't matter. At 3:12 a.m., they woke to the sound of a music box playing from inside the nursery. Raj sat up, wide-eyed. Did you leave something on? Leah shook her head. They crept toward the door, standing outside it like children too afraid to enter a haunted house. The music box played a lullaby neither of them recognized. And beneath the tune, layered just faintly, was crying. They opened the door slowly. The music stopped. The air was freezing, and there, inside the crib, sat Anika's favorite stuffed bunny. Only, Anika had been sleeping in their room. Leah stepped forward, picked up the bunny, and screamed. On the wall, drawn in something dark and greasy like soot, was a small handprint. Toddler-sized, just above the crib. Below it, written in crude letters, were the words, "Let her go." Raj grabbed Leah's arm. "We need help. Real help." Leah nodded. "I think she wants to take Anika." They didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear. Emma was no longer just a voice. She was in the house. The next morning felt like the beginning of a war. Leah moved through the house like a soldier, measured steps, tense breath, heart heavy with dread. Raj made urgent calls. Leah reached out to Ruth Kendrick again, begging her to come in person. By 2 p.m., the historian arrived. Small, silver-haired, with eyes sharp as flint. She carried a leather satchel filled with old maps, black and white photographs, and a tiny metal box. They sat at the kitchen table, with Anika nestled safely in a sling on Leah's chest. You were right, Ruth said, laying out the items. The spirit isn't just lingering. She's claiming space, and possibly a replacement. She pointed to an old photograph from 1905. A girl with tight ringlets and a pale dress, barefoot. A name scribbled on the back, Emmeline Lambert. The girl who died here? Raj asked. Ruth nodded. She was 2 when she fell down the stairs. But there's more. The second child, her older brother, was blamed. He had night terrors afterward. Kept saying she wouldn't stop crying at night, even after she was buried. The parents eventually moved away and sold the house. It never stayed in one family long. Why didn't anyone warn us? Leah whispered. Ruth hesitated. Because most people think it's nonsense, except the families who lose sleep, or worse. Leah tightened her arms around Anika. What does she want? Ruth looked grave. A mother, a home, a crib. She's bound to these objects, to this space. When you moved in with a real baby, real love, something she never truly got, she latched on. But now she's growing possessive, jealous, and that makes her dangerous. Leah's throat was dry. Can we get rid of her? We can try to guide her out, Ruth said. But first, we have to acknowledge her. That night, they set the nursery as it once was, just as it had been before Anika was born. Same crib, same wallpaper, same bunny. But this time, the room was cold for a reason. They were ready. Ruth lit a small candle, placed it near the crib, and took out a child's antique rattle. She placed it gently inside. Emma, Ruth called out softly. You're not forgotten. We know you were here. We know you were hurt. But this baby is not yours. She needs her mother. You need peace. The candle flickered violently. The monitor came alive, even though it wasn't plugged in. And then, a cry, a child's cry, from somewhere deep inside the walls. Leah stepped forward, her voice cracking. Emma, I see you. I hear you. But you can't stay. I won't let you take her. You were loved. You are loved. But you have to let go. The door slammed shut behind them. The crib shook. The monitor hissed. And then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. The candle blew out. The door creaked open. And for the first time in weeks, the room was warm. Leah rushed to Anika, who had been with Raj down the hall. She was smiling, cooing softly. The nursery stayed empty after that. They turned it into a quiet reading room. Anika slept soundly every night after that. No more crying. No more voices. But on the first birthday of Emmeline Lambert, Leah lit a candle. A tiny cake sat alone on the nursery windowsill. No singing. No monitor. Just silence. And peace. Some stories break our hearts. Others chill our bones. But the most powerful ones remind us that grief, love, and longing transcend even the barrier between life and death. Confessions like these make us believe that not all hauntings are evil. Some are simply a child's cry to be remembered. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Tears and Truth for more hauntingly emotional tales that blend real emotions with chilling mystery.